Om Aganatimrandasya Garagana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yanatashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Sayam Rupakaram Mayam Dharati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishakhanvitam Stam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pango Mam Mater Mater Gati Matsavasha Param Bhavja Radha Navadan Mohanam Siman Rasa Rasaram Bibam Sivada Karsan Panashanopire Gopinata Sri Esharam Divyad Vrindaranya Kapadrumada Sri Madhwadnagari Shima Shanishto Sri Sri Radha Shira Govindari of Prasadavihi Seva Manushmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Chajagati Taya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namam Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Dhadajam Mangalam Panani Kaksho Mangalayatano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodayate Om Mahadevi Chavidmahi Vishnu Padniti Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodayate Mahalakshmi Namastuvyam Sare Sare Hari Priya Namastuvyam Dharadade Tapta Kanchana Goringira Hare Vrindavaneshwari Vishavana Sute Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Dev Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabrahma Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha Durgame Pati Meandasha Skarapate Guru Sari Kripaya Sananadu Santu Santam Vadam Mukam Kavit Bakarayan Sabarashmarane Panga Girlanga de Dekatadagani Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Pacharine Nirvashesa Sanyavadi Praskata Desara Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, Rob. We're glad you're safe and sound after rappelling up to 500 feet in the air in Ogden. Rob said it wasn't actually 500 feet above the ground. It was at a slope. And he was with his aunt and uncle and relatives. They had a wonderful day. There's some spectacular cliffs in Ogden area. Really, really good surrounding landscape. Haven't talked to Joshua yet. Joshua had gone to Los Angeles Rath Yatra over the weekend. Should be back by now, I'm guessing. But I haven't touched bases with him. We want to hear all about it from him. Good morning, Brent. Good morning, Govinda Dev. Good morning, Manasaganga. Super. I mentioned I gave the invocation at the Norda White Coat ceremony July 30th, Saturday, July 30th. It's interesting because we've had a number of those students from that class drop by. The most recent was Sudeep from Guntur in India. Nice, good-looking, fit, athletic young man who's 2 weeks or so into his matriculation there at the Nordic College. Says it's very tough. But again, they have the modules of 3 to 8 students who work together and learn together and who are graded together. And so he says his companions are super, super people. And he's enjoying it, but came to the Sunday feast day before yesterday in order to get a spiritual break from his studies. We were glad to sit down and spend some time with him. I believe Brent talked to him because of the commonality of the event, the White Coat ceremony having been held at the UBU Center. Plus, Brent is an excellent instructor. He's an educator. And so I always see Brent sitting down with somebody of intelligence and somebody from the academic community. And Brent does a great job of explaining Krishna consciousness to them because that's, after all, his profession, is explaining things to students. And so he brings that with him on Sunday and engages it in the service of Krishna. We have Balaram Purnima coming up on Thursday in Salt Lake City. Here in Spanish Fork, there's a huge wedding on Friday morning with 150 people, so we're going to be busy cooking and preparing for that. But should be quite a gathering of devotees in Salt Lake City. We'll have a modest observation of Balaram Purnima here with just a reading and an arti on Friday evening at 6 o'clock. So if you're local and you don't want to travel to Salt Lake City, you're welcome to join us on Thursday evening for a very modest observation of Balaram Purnima. Otherwise, if you want something a little more grand, then make the trek up to Salt Lake City. I think everything starts at 6 p.m. Thanks for joining us, Bhakti Gary, Jay, Manasaganga, Govinda Dev, as well as, of course, Brent. So we're revisiting the 22nd verse in the 7th chapter, 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam for the 11th time, which is not a record, but tomorrow we will tie the record. The most sessions that we've had on any particular verse have been 12, and we will come even to that tomorrow, and if we decide to continue, we will break our record on Monday morning. So drum roll, da-da-da-da-da-da. The suspension builds. George Govinda Dev voted very emphatically in the comment section yesterday. Go for it, Drew. Let's break the record. If you're going to break the record, I can't think of a better, more extensive topic to do it on than fearlessness. So I hope that you all are becoming more and more free from fear as we proceed through this series of talks. It could be a little book, right? 12 45-minute sessions on fearlessness. It could be a book on the subject, couldn't it? We had some editing help and some proofreading help. I was thinking of the Goswamins in Vrindavan. Their main activity, aside from excavating holy places, was combing through the scriptures and isolating various topics and various themes. Scriptures are already there. They're a standard body of knowledge covering every area of human endeavor and inquiry. But the contribution that God-conscious people, or people in the line of specific succession, can make, the offering that you can make, so to speak, to your spiritual master, is to go through the scriptures, sort things out according to various themes, and then present the scriptures under certain headings. You look at the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, that's what it is. That's what it is. It's categorizing the various emotions and characteristics of pure devotional service. And so something we can do for our spiritual master. So we have the material for a book here. In fact, how many books we could have created from our talks over the last 2 years. And it's nice to think about maybe at some point making a book out of it as an offering to our spiritual master. And then, of course, everything's not just by rote. Everything's not just transposed from one part to another, but one does add one's own personal experiences. You know, Prabhupada used to have the commentaries of Baladev Vidyapasant Vishwanath Chakravarti open on the table before him as he presented his Bhaktivedanta purports. And so a great deal of that material is, Prabhupada passing it on to us from the previous acharyas. But then again, everybody's free to add their own testimony, their own experience. Krishna says to Arjuna, Arjuna, you tell the people that Krishna's devotee never perishes. So Krishna wants us to give our own testimony, not just to pass down the information, but to blend into it and add to it our own personal experience of the veracity of the knowledge of the scriptures. And it shouldn't be a lot, but 10%. I remember reading an article on architecture when I was in school. It was written by Christopher Wren, one of the most famous of all architects. And he said a really innovative building, a cutting-edge building, uses 97% of the standard architectural techniques which have been tried and true and which give you a building that's stable. You have to take what's been given to you from the past in order to create a building with fidelity, with integrity. But you can add a certain amount, a certain small percentage of your own innovative, creative vision. And so Christopher Wren said the most radical buildings, it's not more than 10% of your own. And so we take the standard body, which comes down to us through the disciplic session, the great realized masters, and when we add little tidbits here and there from our own experience in order to verify the eternal truths of the scriptures. So here we go, hopefully with that same sort of formula, and who knows, might be a tome in the future. Krishna Krishna Mahabaho Bhaktanama Tama Govardhana Abhavargovsi Samsaram. My dear Lord Krishna, you are almighty personality of God, and there's no limit to your different energies. Therefore, only you are competent to instill fearlessness in the heart of your devotees. Everyone in the flames of material desires can find the path of liberation in you only. Let's talk about yogis. It's a big area of human endeavor, especially in India. Everybody who's interested in yoga, self-realization, mystic cities, they have to take reference from India because that's where it's been practiced. That's where it's originated. That's where it's been practiced. That's where you get the famous names of the yogis throughout history. They almost universally grew up and lived and practiced in India. And yet our story today has to do with perhaps the greatest of all yogis. His name is Durvasa Muni, who when his power, his yogic self-created power came up against the devotion, the dependence on the part of Maharaj Ambarish on the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, it was discovered that Maharaj had taken by far the path of fearlessness, whereas Durvasa Muni, with all of his yogic powers and techniques and devices, could not protect himself in the end from fearfulness. And I want to preface that with a story that Prabhupada told about a European who had come to India to become a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. So someone asked this European, and he was a scientist. He had degrees in physics and biology and all that stuff. And so someone said, when you have the whole of the scientific world of the Western countries, and you have the degrees, you have the bona fides, the certification, why would you give all that up and come to India in order to study the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam? And his answer was, at least in a crude way, the modern world has accomplished all of the 8 mystic siddhis. To be able to fly in the air, to burrow underground, to get anything you want from any part of the world. We go to the supermarket and basically Prapti Siddhi is on display there. We've got things from all over the world. In fact, so much so that we rarely eat local food. And all of the mystic siddhis from the past have been duplicated or at least imitated in a crude way by the modern advances of technology. And so the German disciple very insightfully foresaw that Western technology had gone, and this is in the 40s, had gone as far as it could. In fact, it was beginning to turn on itself. Look at how much technology was involved in World War I, and look at how much more technology was involved in World War II. One time Prabhupada said, the fruit of advanced technology is that we learn how to kill better, more efficiently. We learn how to kill on a wholesale level. That's the fruit of modern technology. We've increased our ability to kill above and beyond everything else. So the German disciple figured that Western technology had pretty much run its course. Of course, we didn't have computers, we didn't have cell phones and all, but, as far as any of that increasing the quality of life, the jury's still out on that. So even if technology had not completely run its course and there were still bells and whistles to be discovered, still he envisioned its limitations, I think is the point. And he decided to go to India to achieve that which is not available through empiricism and exploitation of material nature. He anticipated the demise, the exhaustion of material science, and he went to India to become a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. There's another kind of folk story about the limitations of yogic practices. Many yogis want to call attention to themselves. Many disciples of yogis refer to their yogi mentor as God, and the yogis do not generally disabuse them of that notion. They generally don't contradict them. They allow their disciples to call them as God. There was one frizzy-haired Jimi Hendrix, sort of a fellow in India, passed away maybe 15 years ago. Thousands and thousands of people called him as God. He never referred to himself as God, but he sat silent while his disciples referred to him as God. And so the story is told that a man from a small village on the banks of the Ganges and the foothills of the Himalayas went deeper into the Himalayas. Nobody saw him for 40 years. As a young child, he traveled out of the village seeking yogic perfection. 40 years later, he came back as a middle-aged man. Everybody welcomed him back, and they said, "What did you learn during the 40 years you were in the depths of the Himalayas, associating with other yogis?" He said, "I'll show you." And as everybody assembled watching, the yogi walked across the Ganges River. He walked on water. People make a big deal out of Christ walking in water. In fact, some people say that Christ walking in water proves that he was God or the Son of God. Actually, it just proves that he had yogi powers. It doesn't prove that he was God. There may be other more compelling reasons why Jesus was divine. But to be able to walk on water should not be one of them, because it's not an uncommon ability amongst yogis in India since thousands of years. So before all the amazed crowd of village people, the yogi walked across the Ganges and returned and walked back. And everybody was oohing and awing and clapping and applauding. They were so impressed. You can imagine they were on the verge of accepting him as God, worshiping him as God for his cheap magic trick. But there was one boatman leaning nonchalantly in his boat, yawning throughout the whole thing, obviously not in the least bit interested. So the yogi, who wanted everyone's adulation, who wanted everyone's respect, most likely that had been his motivation from the very beginning, he was a little frustrated because he just spent 40 years of his life, and not everyone was wowed by his exhibition of yogic mystic powers. And so he went up to this boatman and he said, I see everybody else seems to be suitably impressed. Why is it that you seem just the opposite, singularly unimpressed? And the boatman said, "Look," he said, "if you want to go across the Ganges, I can take you for 3 cents. I've been taking people, my fee is 3 cents, 3 pice. And you spent 40 years to learn a yogic technique that I charge people 3 pice for? I don't think that would have been the best use of your time." So I think you'll agree that practical boatman had a point. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yoginam pivisarvasham magaranam shada bhajitam yomi tirkanam. Krishna is Yogeshwar. He's the ultimate authority on what is and what is not yogi. He's the ultimate authority on who's a higher level yogi and who's a lower level yogi. So he doesn't mention the water walking yogis as being amongst the cream of the crop exactly. But he does mention Yoginam Sarvasham, of all yogis, of all yogi practitioners. Madha Shradhate, but who worships me with great and transcendental affection is considered the highest of all the yogis. He doesn't mention who walks on water, who makes himself light, who makes himself heavy, who travels from one planet to another, who can bring things from a distant places, who can go into the air, who can go into the ground, who can convince people by hypnotism. He doesn't mention any of the Eightfold Mystic Yogi cities. Their embellishments, their trappings, their decorations. But yogi, the heart of yoga, is to yoke in devotion to the Supreme. The true yogi, the best amongst yogis, is he who gives up all desires to be independently worshipped, to have his name and fame bandied about on the lips of common people. The true yogi is he who depends completely on the protection and direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, the greatest of all yogis, who appears and reappears throughout the pages of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavatam, the Vedas, is Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni is nothing less than an incarnation of Rudra, the yogic expansion of Lord Shiva, tinged with a bit of anger. Rudra is kind of the anger aspect of Lord Shiva. And in fact, Durvasa Muni proved himself time and time again to be very erratic, very sensitive, easily angered, sometimes provoked unnecessarily. And that was the case when he came to visit the great King Maharaj Ambarish. Ambarish was a king, and yet rather than bring attention to himself, he spent all of his time serving in the temple. Every single, his arms, his legs, his voice, his ears, his eyes, his nose, his sense of touch, he engaged all of his servants' senses in the service of the Lord. In this way, he was an ideal yogi as well as a king. He governed his whole kingdom on the basis of Krishna consciousness. He oversaw all the citizens on the basis of Krishna consciousness. He didn't necessarily practice yoga, practice arts and skills independent of devotional service. Rather than promote himself, his emphasis was to deepen his surrender, his trust, and his faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, as part of his devotion, Maharaj Ambarish decided to fast, and he did so for 1 year. He did an Ekadasi fast for 1 year. Now, as important as doing the fast is breaking the fast at the exact moment. If you don't break the fast at the exact moment, there are negative results to be had from all that impressive austerity. And so it so happened that as the moment approached for Maharaj Ambarish to break his 1 year fast with a little bit of food, the great yogi Ambarish appeared, and he expected lavish hospitality. So indeed, Ambarish Maharaj invited him to go wash up, and he instructed his cooks to prepare a huge feast for Maharaj Ambarish. Now, normally, when a guest arrives at your house, even if you're ready to sit down at the meal, you interrupt your own meal and you make sure that the guest is fed sumptuously before you eat. That's the etiquette in Indian homes, whether it's a palace or whether it's a thatched hut. Guest eats first. So now Maharaj Ambarish is presented with a dilemma. He's supposed to break his fast at a certain time. That moment is fast approaching. In the meantime, Durvasa's washing up. So Maharaj Ambarish doesn't want to eat before his guest because that's considered rude. At the same time, he needs to break his fast because, after all, he's got austerities of 1 year's duration resting on breaking the fast at the right time. So he consulted his counselors, his ministers, and they said, just drink a little water. Drinking water is considered breaking the fast and not breaking the fast. So while Durvasa was away, Ambarish sipped a little water. Now, Durvasa knows everything. He has that vision, that drishta, that he can know what's going on supernaturally. And he intimated that Ambarish had drunk water, which obviously wasn't a great offense. But Durvasa Muni is very much taken with himself. He very much thinks that everybody should subordinate themselves in awe of his yogic power and his stature. And so he got personally offended. He stormed in. He accused Maharaj Ambarish of being rude, of minimizing his importance, he conjured up a demon of fire and directed it to rush towards Maharishi, burn him to ashes. And Maharishi Ambarish's practice was surrender. He did not actively defend himself. He thought of Krishna. Krishna will fight your battles. Krishna promises that he will always protect his surrendered devotee. So Maharishi Ambarish's reaction to the great danger that he was in was to immediately, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And without any delay, the Lord sent his own weapon of fire, the razor-sharp Sudarshana discus. And within a moment, that Sudarshana discus destroyed the apparition of Maharishi Ambarish. And not only did it destroy the demon that Maharishi Ambarish had conjured up and that Durvasa had conjured up, but it began to chase Durvasa. It was going to kill Durvasa Muni for having offended a devotee. The Lord will accept insults to his own person, but he will not accept insults to his devotee. So the description is that the yogi fled in fear. The yogi was terrified in spite of his having achieved the position of practically king of the yogis. And it's interesting to note that amongst his yoga powers was the ability to travel anywhere within the universe, which he did. He went to Brahma, he went to Vishnu, he went all over the universe trying to see who would get this razor-sharp burning disc off of his back. The disc was just coming behind him, following him like a missile everywhere he went. He went to Brahma Loka. He asked Brahma, can you help me? Brahma said, nope, you offended Lord Vishnu. He went to Shiva. Can you help me? Shiva's the patron saint of yogis. Ambarish thought that, well, I'm an expansion of Shiva. Shiva protects the yogis, and so he expected that Shiva would be able to do something to alleviate the situation. Shiva would not do anything. He said, your offense was to Vishnu, so go to Vishnu. So the verse in the 9th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes all this, is Tada Viduraviksha Shaparesham Durdasha Durdave Bito Dikshu Prana Paripshanam. Bito means fear. The great yogi was shot full of fear. That means he was not an exception to the general populace in the material world, in the Kali Yuga, every one of whom is governed by fear 24 hours a day. So all of Durvasa's yogic practices did not succeed in immunizing him from fear at such time as he offended a devotee of the Lord. So Tadabridur Ukshaya says that seeing that his own attempt to dominate Maharishi Ambarish had failed, in fact his the apparition that he conjured up had been destroyed by the Sudarshana Chakra, and the Sudarshana Chakra was chasing right behind him, burning his backside. It says, Durvasa Durdave Bito. Durvasa ran here and there in all directions throughout the universe, terrified, completely frightened out of his wits. Dikshu Prana Paripsha, fearful of his life, which was very, very dear to him. Now it is said that if the Lord is in the center of your life, things which would normally be difficult become easy. And if the Lord is not in the center of your life, things which are normally easy become difficult. And so Durvasa Muni, not having lived a God-centered life like Maharishi Ambarish, found that things were getting very difficult and very complicated for him right now. And even when he went to Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Lord asked Lord Vishnu if he couldn't do something to give him relief from the Sudarshana Chakra. The chakra is Vishnu. The chakra was sent by Vishnu. Durvasa thought that if anyone can call off the chakra, it is its owner. It is the one who dispensed it. And so logically he went to Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu said, I don't have the power. You offended my devotee. I am in the pocket of my devotee. My devotees have given up everything, wife, children, wealth. They're prepared to even give up their life. Did you notice how calmly Maharaj Ambarish was standing while you were sending your fire weapon to him? He would not have been disturbed even if he had given up his life. But I will not allow that to happen. I will not let anyone bully my devotees. And so, because I am not independent, I am the servant of my devotees, the protector of my devotees. It is not within my power to call off the Sudarshana weapon. You have to go to Maharaj Ambarish, the one you originally offended, in order to do that. For his part, Maharaj was standing where Durvasa had left him. It was actually a year. It was actually another year that Durvasa was running here and there. He returned after a year, and Maharaj Ambarish was standing in the same place. And Maharaj Ambarish wasn't saying, "Whew, that was a close one. I almost got my ticket punched there. That was almost all she wrote." Maharaj Ambarish was only thinking about the plight of Durvasa Muni. Maharaj Ambarish was thinking that because of me, Durvasa Muni is suffering so much. If there was only something I could do to bring him relief. And then when Durvasa Muni came back to Ambarish after a year, Ambarish was so happy he could have hugged Durvasa. He said, "Thank you." He said, "My only desire was to relieve you from your suffering, and you have come to allow me to do that. Thank you so much for that opportunity." Durvasa Muni couldn't believe his ears. He couldn't believe his eyes. He thought, these devotees are something else, I allowed myself to be provoked unnecessarily. He didn't even offend me. I mean, drinking water, big deal. He'd been fasting for a year. For my sake, he gave up eating a meal. He gave up eating solid food only in order to meet the conditions of the fast. Did he drink a little water? And I just flew off the handle. I am totally at fault here. I'm totally ashamed. And when I come back to him, what's the mood that he's in? He's been worried this whole time about me. He's thankful to me for giving him the opportunity to call off the Sudarshana Chakra. Now I see the glories of devotees, that even though one offends them, they not only do not take offense, but they think of the well-being of the offender. They think, what then can I do to bless that offender? That offender is obviously not in very good consciousness. That offender does obviously not have very good control over their impulses. They don't have very good impulse control. They don't have very good anger control, because there is no reason to offend or to envy a devotee. Devotees have the best interests of everyone else at heart. They're not concerned about their own safety or their own well-being. They're thinking 24 hours a day. Madgata Mraprana Bodhyashana Katayantas Chamamna Tashanti Chara Manticha. They're conspiring with each other and making plans to relieve the general populace of suffering. Devotees are incomparable. There is no other class of men that could indeed be compared with the devotees. Now, all Ambarish Maharaj had to do, not only to protect himself, but to enlighten the great misguided Yogi Durvasa Muni, was just take shelter, abide in the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He didn't raise a finger in his own defense. He didn't notch an arrow. He didn't cock a javelin. He didn't unsheath a sword. He stood with the Anjali Mudra, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Imagine the frustration of Durvasa Muni. His whole life and energy and education had been geared towards mastering these mystic yogi powers, and here is someone who had no interest whatsoever in his own promotion, his own well-being. His only focus was to increase his trust and faith, to lean more and more and more on Krishna. Durvasa Muni's whole story was how to become separately independent, and Ambarish's whole story was how to become more and more and more and more dependent on the mercy and the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And without any anxiety, without any effort on his part, Ambarisha very easily overcame the aggression of Durvasa Muni. And in spite of all lifetime of successful pursuit and practice of yogi powers, Durvasa Muni must have been really, really frustrated to see that there was nothing he could do. He couldn't touch a hair on the head of his devotee. Well, this is the conclusion. Klesha buddhi upasharani karmani dehanam vishnam netatarvodam. Those who are out of God, they work very hard. They spend lifetime to achieve results which will get them the attention of people in general. But the result is only frustrating. What they work hard for, what they conceive of, what their ambitions are, having achieved them, they're not what they were cracked up to be. They do not satisfy, give fulfillment to the inner soul. And so the end result of any activity outside of God-centeredness, outside of surrendering to the Supreme, is going to result in frustration. On the other hand, devotees, very easily, without unnecessary work and endeavor, without envying others, without putting themselves into competition with others, they just try to be the best version of the person that Krishna created them to be. They try to submerge themselves in the ocean, which is Krishna consciousness. And it is said that for them, without working particularly hard, the results exceed the devotee's expectations. You'll never find a devotee being frustrated in his expectations. I'll cite our own example. When we moved from the Los Angeles temple where we'd been serving for 10 years and came to Utah, our dream was to run a radio station. I'd been doing book distribution for a number of years, and I came to the point where if I wasn't doing book distribution, I didn't feel comfortable. I felt selfish. We generally take Sundays off. We go out and do book distribution Monday through Saturday. We generally take Sundays off. I wouldn't feel that good on Sundays because I was patterned, trained and conditioned for so many years to go out and approach people and offer the transcendental literature to them. And so when I would have the day off on Sunday, I felt like there was something I should be doing, but I wasn't doing. There was something that I was neglecting. I always just felt a little creepy crawly on Sundays. And I thought year after year after year, how can I bring about that situation that I'm always preaching, that I'm always extending the benefits of Krishna consciousness to people? And eventually I started thinking a radio station would do that. A radio station would get that monkey off my back, So in Los Angeles, I started monitoring a publication called Broadcast Weekly. They have a radio stations for sale classified section in the back. So after about a year of going to the library every month when this publication was produced and perusing the radio station for sale ads, I saw a small AM radio, 1,000-watt daytime radio station advertised for sale with 5 acres of land in Provo, Utah, right near a major university, 35,000 students. Little did I know at that time that a junior college would evolve into Utah Valley University, which has at present, I think, even 35 or 40,000 students. Both those universities are within 10 miles of the temple, within the broadcast area of the radio station. So one thing led to another. The station wasn't doing very well commercially because it was in the shadow of the Provo and Salt Lake City stations. It was owned by a fellow named Starrett Neal. Nice fellow. We got to be friends. And we made a deal with a small down payment. We were the owners, quote unquote, of a radio station. And our only expectation was to be able to run this radio station so that I could have days off, have days when I would not feel urged to go out and to meet people in public and distribute books. I had what I had envisioned, which is to never feel guilty, to always be extending the knowledge of Krishna consciousness 24 hours a day. The radio station achieved that. It did all of that and more. I can be sleeping now with a smile on my face, knowing the transcendental sound vibration. Whether people take it or not, that's up to them. I'm not going to worry about that. But I've done my job as a disciple of Srila Prabhupada to make the information available 24 hours a day. And now technology has evolved to the point where 1480 KHKN radio doesn't just reach 30 miles around throughout the Utah Valley, but technology is such that today, anywhere there's Wi-Fi, and you have a free app which you can download, such as Simple Radio. You scroll through all the radio stations which are available. You look for 1480 KHKN Krishna Radio, and you can hear our little radio station in Spanish Fork, Utah, anywhere in the world that there is Wi-Fi. We never expected the radio station to have that kind of a reach. We never expected, we never dreamed that in our lifetimes we would ever be able to build one temple in Utah. What to speak of building a second temple in Salt Lake City? Those things were not even anywhere near our radar. But Krishna had it all planned out. He had a glorious and wondrous, beyond what we could expect, beyond what we could dream, beyond what we could imagine. Krishna had all that lined up, and we did not have to work particularly hard. You'd think coming to an area where it's 90% another religion, with no church members, no devotees, not even at that time a very large Indian community, no resources, no money. We spent every last penny on the down payment to the radio station. You would have thought that it would be extremely hard, difficult, Herculean to build a temple, even a small temple. And yet it wasn't that hard. It wasn't nearly as hard as you might expect it to. Part of course, of the delight of it was the acceptance, the willingness, the hospitality of the local population. When the news was announced that we hope to build a radio station, everybody was our well-wisher. People donated labor, they donated money. We had Dr. Dinesh Patel from Salt Lake City who mustered the Indian community, and they donated generously at that point in time. There were hardly any South Indians here at that time. It was all basically North Indians, Gujaratis, motel owners, and 7-Eleven owners, and some doctors and all. So it wasn't as difficult as you might have thought to build 2 temples in Utah. Now, I'll tell you the secret. If you have an ambition to take ground for the kingdom and you want to start a temple somewhere and see it prosper, people are always asking me, True, how did you do it? Okay, well, you tuned in on the right day, you lucky dogs, you. Because I'm going to tell you how you can build temples in areas that would be unlikely spots for planning a temple by doing 2 simple things. The first is smile. Have a good smile. Welcome people. Wherever you set up, and we set up in a log cabin with a little gift store, and we had Sunday feasts in the living room. Whoever comes to purchase the smallest item or to check you out or to attend the Sunday feast, make sure you smile. You make them feel welcome. You show gracious hospitality. You prioritize them. One devotee told me recently, we're talking in terms of relevance, how ISKCON as a society, how the Hare Krishna movement can achieve more relevance in today's society. And one fact which someone mentioned was that in a particular temple, for every $25 they spent on deity worship, they probably spent $1 on outreach. And that might go for time as well. For every 25 hours spent on deity worship, spend an hour on outreach. And of course, we have to worship the deity. The deity is our life and soul. But for me, the deity are the visitors. It's always been that. The visitors and the guests are the deity for me. So that's why hospitality was our most important priority. That when people come through the door, make them feel welcome. Make them feel like come home. Now, There are two kinds of people. There are people that take everything for granted, and there are people that are grateful. Now, you can lavish all your hospitality, all your smiles, all your graciousness on the people who take things for granted, and they will not appreciate it particularly. They will think that, yeah, I did them a favor by visiting their temple. They should smile. They should be grateful that I graced their doorway. And those people walk away, and it never even occurs to them to reciprocate for your smiles and your welcoming. Fortunately, only about half the people are like that. The other half of the people, that when you show them a courtesy, when you smile and you recognize who they are, and you look at them and you listen to them, and eventually if they come back a second or third time, you know their name. Those are a higher type of people. They cannot accept your graciousness, your hospitality, without reciprocating. They just can't do it. They can't do it. They have to have self-respect. They have to be able to look at themselves in the mirror. They give. They reciprocate. And when people reciprocate, then here's the second secret. Say thank you. Thank you. We don't say thank you enough. We are infected by that same taking for granted, it's due me. You know, if you think, well, I smiled and I greeted them and I gave them, and yeah, they should have given, and you withhold the thank you, you're not going to go very far. People are going to be disappointed. They're going to think that you're a little bit two-faced. So smile, receive people graciously, and when they reciprocate, as 50% of the people will do, then say thank you. Say thank you. There was a story about Rudyard Kipling in this connection that was always meaningful to me. When the temple opened in 2001, the Spanish Book Temple opened, there were about 5,000 friends and devotees and well-wishers who came. Orrin Hatch flew out from Washington, D.C. to be one of the keynote speakers. Gary Herbert, who was a Utah County Commissioner at that time, later to become the governor, obviously, was one of our keynote speakers. Anutama came out from, again, Washington, D.C. Badr and Ryan flew out, and everybody, Dinesh Patel was there, and they all said a few words of appreciation. And there were about 5,000 people who attended the grand opening of the temple on that day. So I remember just going to from one group of people to another group of people, saying thank you over and over and over and over again. That was all I said. I just said thank you about 1,000 times that day. And I remember a story about Rudyard Kipling in this connection. Rudyard Kipling was one of the most well-paid authors in his lifetime up until that point in history. Most authors' works became famous, and their wealth and publishing rights and all kicked in after the authors, kicked in posthumously. But Rudyard Kipling was very well paid during his lifetime. And one time, a smart alecky reporter came up to him. The reporter pulled a $100 bill, held it sort of back away from Rudyard Kipling, close to his chest, and with a kind of a insinuating tone of voice, he said, "I've done the math, Mr. Kipling, and I've calculated that for every word you've written, you've earned $50. Now I have $100 here, and I will give it to you if you can give me the two most important words that you've written over and over and over again, written or spoken." And Rudyard Kipling was like one of our Krishna Sankirtan devotees on book distribution. Faster than the eye could see, his arm snaked out. He snapped that $100 bill out of the hand of the reporter, tucked it in the inside of his jacket pocket, and he said the two most important words in his vocabulary, you guessed it, thank you. Thank you. So the choice is ours. We can lean on God like Maharaj Ambarish, depend upon him, and he will never, ever disappoint us. We will never be frustrated. Far from being frustrated, we will be delighted. We will work not particularly hard. If you learn the secret of smiling and saying thank you, you will experience results which are beyond what you could think or even imagine. Far from being frustrated, the results will exceed your expectations by a country mile. Or you can follow in the footsteps of Ambarish Maharaj, who did everything for himself, who worked hard, strained, toiled in order to get personal attention, personal name and fame. He relied upon his own abilities, his own talents. He valued independent action, independent lifestyle. He did not value dependence. He saw dependence as a sign of weakness. And look at what happened to him. Something which would have been very simple. Just go, let the man take his water, and then have your lunch. No big deal. Don't get bent up about it. But so swept up in false prestige was he, I'm a yogi, that he had to pick out one fault unnecessarily on behalf of Mars, totally overreact, no impulse control, no anger control, totally overact, and then having miscalculated about the Lord's favoring his devotees, for 1 year he had to run, being burned on his backside, totally humiliated, totally on the brink of destruction until such time as he circled back to that devotee. The devotee had only been concerned about his well-being and immediately not only forgave him and brought about the standing down of the Sudarshana Chakra, but thanked him for the opportunity to do him good, to relieve him of his suffering condition. Prabhupada says, we can practically see how the devotees who have dedicated their lives for the service of the Lord in Krishna consciousness are getting immense opportunities for that service of the Lord without working very, very hard. And we'll explore this point in more depth tomorrow on Wednesday, Wisdom Wednesday, which will also be the 12th time we've revisited this topic of fearlessness. It will be bringing us even with our previous record of 12 times. And then we'll see what is to be discussed on Monday morning, whether we go where we have never gone before. But for now, I hope that there were some insights. I hope that you enjoyed and learned and benefited from this session, as I know I have. Thank you so much. Don't forget to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And before we sign off, let's see who we have with us here. Brent, from the very beginning. Govinda Dev, Manasa Ganga, thanks very much for joining us. Tell us how your art is going, your Krishna art. Jay, we met Jay and his wife in the Holy Festival of Colors in April back in Las Vegas. Bhakti Gary, Rakesh, Raghavan, Jean, Britta from Ogden. Manasa Ganga says, when we become angry about how we were not glorified and we are quote unquote right, we must assume it is Maya's influence in our thoughts and need to more completely surrender to Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna. That's a reflex that devotees have. Devotees get in trouble. They don't immediately think of how they can defend themselves. The first thought that comes to their mind is, Hare Krishna. Let me lean on Krishna as an opportunity to lean and depend on Krishna more. But those who are not in devotional service, they immediately think of how they can defend themselves with their own powers. And usually, the reason they have to defend themselves is because they weren't peaceful, they weren't self-controlled, they didn't have the well-being of others in mind, and they overstepped. They aggravated, they incited, they provoked people with their hubris, with their ego, with their pride. That was the case with Durvasa Muni. How often do we imagine offenses where there are no offenses committed? That's not them, that's us. That's a problem in us. That's ego, that's pride. You'll not find that in the hearts of devotees. Further, Manasa Ganga says, regarding entitlement, my sister in the 1970s saw no chairs in my room, so she tried to sit on the altar. You'll have to tell us that whole story sometime. Vaibhavi's got some little emojis with big teeth. She liked that contribution by Manasa Ganga. So Rob, are you Are you inspired to make a comment on our theme today?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Um, yeah, loving devotion is humility in motion.
You're getting all these good, juicy tidbits from Wisdom of the Sages?
No, from you.
Oh, really? I didn't even know I said that so poetically. Can you run it past me one more time?
Loving devotion is, or excuse, loving devotion is humility in motion.
I like it. I like it. That's our hashtag today. Loving devotion, humility, and motion. Excellent, excellent. And our overall hashtag for the theory is hashtag no fear. No fear. And we'll delve further into it tomorrow, and then most likely we'll go for the record on Monday. So thank you very much. Enjoy Balaram Purnima in Salt Lake or in your local temple or remotely. It's generally broadcast through Facebook Live. As I mentioned, we'll do a modest celebration here with a 6 o'clock arti and a reading. There'll be a more elaborate observance in Salt Lake City. I won't be there because we have a big wedding on Friday morning with 150 people coming. We have cooking and everything to do. So some big things coming up this week, the 12th in our series on Wednesday, and then Balaram Purnima on Thursday, and then for us here in Spanish Fork on Friday, a huge wedding. So always lots happening in the service of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.